The train platform buzzed with noise that morning, but for the billionaire, every sound felt muted. He wasn't supposed to be here, not without his entourage, not without security, but something about this small desert town had pulled him in. He kept his hat low, his suit dusty enough to blend with the crowd. To them, he was just another traveler, or so he thought. The waitress, barely 20, balanced 2 mugs of coffee on a tray as she slipped between benches. She was used to men staring, some out of desire, others out of spite, but this man didn't look at her at all. His eyes scanned the station walls, the roof beams, the exits. Trained eyes, watching eyes. She'd seen soldiers do the same during the war. As she set down the mugs, she noticed something strange, a hand-carved mark on the wooden pillar near where he stood. At first, it seemed like just another scratch, but then she saw it repeated again, near the telegraph office, and again on a crate beside the track. 3 identical marks, all pointing toward him. Her breath caught. Those weren't random scratches. They were signals. She froze, tray trembling in her hands. The man adjusted his collar, pulling his coat tighter, unaware of the trap closing around him. His wealth had made enemies, and here, stripped of his bodyguards, he was nothing but prey. The waitress knew she had only seconds. She swallowed hard, marched straight up to him and whispered low so only he could hear. "Sir, don't turn around. 3 men are waiting for you."
"I can prove it."
"Look down. Your boot's shadow is crossing their mark." He glanced down, and for the first time, the billionaire's mask cracked. His eyes flicked to hers, sharp and stunned, realizing she had just seen what his millions hadn't bought him. The truth. And in that moment, her quick observation didn't just save his life, it bound their fates together. The billionaire's jaw tightened, but he didn't panic. Panic was for men who hadn't built empires with their bare hands. Still, the girl's warning cut deeper than any contract or betrayal he'd ever known. 3 men, watching, waiting. He shifted his weight, pretending to tie his bootlace, his eyes catching the faint shadow of movement in the reflection of a glass window nearby.
She wasn't lying.
They were there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for him to step outside the station doors. The waitress, clutching her tray like a shield, whispered again. "They mark the exits."
"That's how they'll corner you."
"If you leave alone, you won't leave at all." The billionaire let out a slow breath. He had built skyscrapers, negotiated with oil tycoons, stared down senators, but this was different. Out here, on this cracked, wooden platform in a forgotten town, his power meant nothing. No boardrooms, no guards. Just the sharp edge of survival, and this girl, with coffee-stained hands and shoes worn thin, was the only one who noticed. "Why help me?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Her eyes flashed, steady but pained.
"Because I watched my brother walk into a trap just like this."
No one warned him.
No one cared.
If I'd spoken sooner, he'd still be alive. The billionaire studied her for a long second, and something inside him shifted. This wasn't just chance. This was fate knocking on his door. Then the sharp sound of boots echoed from the far end of the station. One of the marked men stepped forward, pretending to buy a newspaper, his hand brushing the inside of his coat. The other 2 adjusted their hats, splitting apart, closing in on the exits. The billionaire's pulse quickened. He leaned close to the waitress, his words urgent now.
"If I follow you, will you get me out?"
She swallowed, her throat dry. "If you trust me, yes. But once we move, they'll know I'm helping you."
"There's no going back." Her fingers tightened on the tray.
Trembling but ready, and, for the first time in years, the billionaire, who trusted no one, placed his life entirely in the hands of a small-town waitress. "Lead the way," he whispered. And just like that, the station became a battlefield where one wrong step would decide whether he lived or disappeared forever. The waitress moved first. With steady hands, she lifted the tray high, pretending she was simply heading back to the diner car. To anyone watching, it looked like nothing more than a girl doing her job. But beneath that calm face, her pulse hammered. She didn't dare look back. The billionaire followed half a step behind, adjusting his coat like any other weary traveler. His eyes flicked to the corners, catching every shadow, every twitch of movement. He could feel them, closing in like wolves circling cattle. "Left," the waitress whispered, as she passed a row of benches. He obeyed. The first assassin shifted, stepping off the wall. He pretended to read a timetable, but his hand brushed the inside of his coat again, where cold steel surely waited. The second man mirrored the billionaire's pace from across the platform, while the third cut toward the main exit. They were herding him. The billionaire's mind raced. Normally, in a boardroom, he would control the pieces, set the trap, hold the power. But here, with strangers tightening the noose, his empire meant nothing.
Only the girl's voice kept him anchored. "This way," she murmured, pushing open a side door that led to the freight hallway.
Dust filled the air, crates stacked high, lantern light flickering. She slipped inside first, motioning for him to follow. The moment he stepped in, the sound of boots quickened behind them. "They know," he muttered. She pressed a finger to her lips, then pointed to a narrow stairwell that dropped beneath the platform. "The old coal chute.
"No one uses it anymore."
Trust me." They hurried down, the boards creaking under their steps.
Above them a voice rang out, deep, commanding, dangerous. "Don't bother hiding. We only want the man. Step aside, girl, and you won't get hurt." The billionaire froze mid-step.
He had heard voices like that before, men who didn't bluff, men who carried death in their pockets. His instincts screamed to stop, to confront, to pay whatever price it took. But then he looked at her. This waitress who had nothing, yet risked everything. She turned to him, her face pale but resolute.
"Keep moving."
"If they catch us here, we're dead." For the first time, the billionaire realized something terrifying. This young woman's courage outweighed his billions. She had more to lose, yet she didn't falter. He clenched his fists, nodded once, and followed her deeper into the shadows. But as they reached the bottom of the chute, a lantern flared ahead. Another man was waiting. The waitress gasped. "No, there's 4 of them." And in that instant, the billionaire understood. Someone wanted him buried here, and they'd planned it better than he thought. The lantern's glow cut through the darkness, illuminating the 4th man. He wasn't dressed like the others, no hat pulled low, no attempt to blend in. His coat was fine wool, his boots polished, his stance one of authority. This wasn't just another hired gun. This was the one giving orders. The waitress instinctively stepped in front of the billionaire, her tray raised as though that thin sheet of metal could ward off bullets. The man chuckled low, amused. "You got courage, girl." "Shame it's wasted." His eyes slid past her to the billionaire. "You've made powerful enemies, sir, and today they collect." The billionaire said nothing, but his hands curled into fists. He could negotiate a merger with a smile, crush a competitor with a single call. But here, stripped of influence, he was nothing but flesh and blood. And this man wanted it spilled. Then the waitress spoke, her voice trembling but fierce. "If you want him, you'll have to go through me." The room fell silent. Even the assassins shifted, uneasy. It wasn't her words, it was the conviction in them. She wasn't bluffing, the leader sneered.
"Do you even know who you're protecting?"
"He wouldn't give you a dime if you begged for it." The billionaire's chest tightened. For years, that had been true. He built walls of steel and glass around himself, never caring for the ones at the bottom. Yet here, in his most vulnerable moment, it was a girl with nothing who stood before him like a shield, and something inside him broke. "No," he said, stepping forward, his voice like thunder. "You're wrong." She saw what no one else did. She saved me when my fortune couldn't. And if you think I'll let her pay for that... He reached down, grabbed a loose iron rod from the floor, and leveled it like a weapon. "Then you've never negotiated with me." The waitress's eyes widened, not with fear, but with something else, trust. The assassins tensed, ready to strike. But before they could, the whistle of an approaching train split the air. The walls rattled, dust falling from the beams. The distraction was brief, but enough. The billionaire shoved the lantern into the leader's chest, sending flames licking at his coat.
Shouts erupted, chaos breaking loose. "Run!"
He barked. They bolted through the chute, climbing the far ladder, just as the train thundered into the station. The assassins scrambled behind them, but the smoke and roar of the engine swallowed their chase. When the billionaire and the waitress stumbled onto the open platform, the crowd shielded them. Hundreds of bodies creating cover the killers couldn't penetrate. By the time the men fought their way through, their targets were gone. Hours later, the billionaire sat in a quiet diner booth, his suit torn, his hands bruised. Across from him, the waitress sipped water, her eyes still wide with disbelief. He leaned forward, voice low but certain. "You saved my life today. That's not something I forget." He pulled out a checkbook, then stopped, realizing money was the wrong kind of gift. Instead, he asked softly, "What do you need most?" Her lips trembled, the weight of years pressing through her words. A chance. Just a chance to live different than this. The billionaire nodded, a rare softness in his steel-grey eyes. "Then that's what you'll have."
"Not because you saved me."
"But because you reminded me what I almost forgot, that lives are worth more than empires." And as the desert sun bled across the horizon, the waitress realized her quick observation hadn't just saved a billionaire's life. It had changed both of theirs forever.